Hello and welcome to this Hearts of Iron 4 starter guide. In this guide I will take you through the basics of Hearts of Iron 4 so that you may have a very enjoyable first playthrough. So you should really treat this video as supplementary to the basic introduction in the game itself, the tutorial. How can I enjoy this game knowing it's very complex but still focus on just being entertained and enjoying playing the Second World War with my favorite country. So this is the opening screen. You can choose to play single player or multiplayer. I would advise playing the single player game first. There are two scenarios. 1936, basically the main starting point, I would say, and then you have the 14th of August 1939 scenario, which is basically the start of the Second World War, as historically accurate as you can get. Now then you get to country selection. If you already have a favorite country, by all means, pick that. If you don't have a favorite country, I think the best way to start is by playing a not too huge nation. So I would leave out the United States, UK, Germany, the Soviet Union, maybe also not Japan because of the naval complexities and all the islands you have to guard. But Italy and France are really great options for your first games. In the next screen, you have your scenario options. Important to note here, don't touch difficulty. There's no need to put it on easy mode. Also don't go for hard mode for obvious reasons. Iron Man is very cool because it prohibits you from rolling back to prior save games. However, for your first playthrough, just leave it on. If you make this really stupid mistake and your whole army ships off to the other side of the world, you can just roll back. Historical AI, if you leave this option on, it means that countries will put more weight on decisions that they made historically. If that makes any sense. Basically, if they have two options to go historical, non-historical, they have a bigger chance of going historical when you leave this on. Do note that this does not mean that the game will flow historically every time you play it. So now we're in game, and you can see our beautiful country, and you can have a look. I would say have a look where your country borders which other countries, because you may or may not want to place troops there in the near future. So what are your country's properties? Right, so if you click left up, you get your flag. The key thing is your political situation. So the game has basically four main political spheres. Now naturally in the game these political preferences will make put these countries heads first against each other. So it's important to note Italy is a fascist country. Obviously, Nazi Germany is a fascist country, and they'll be inclined to work together or at least not attack each other. Now, what resources does your country have? What does make your country different from others? As you can see that at the top of the screen. I'm going to cover a few important ones which you want to take note of at the beginning of the game. Political power, this charges passively, and you'll be able to use it for decision making. Stability. The more stability you have, the more fluent your country runs. It's something you can influence by decisions, and generally you want to have the stat as high as possible. If it's low while you're at war, you may run into problems. War support. If this is very low, people are not very willing to go to war yet. So you may not ramp up your war economy yet. Very importantly, manpower. A very key stat to see here is the amount of eligible core population. This is 41.25 million. I'll show this somehow in editing. And 2.5% of it is available, which means that's your available soldier pool. This is important to note because you want to take into account the strengths and weaknesses of your country when mapping out your strategy. Factories. This is just showing the amount of factories you have. If you have a lot of factories, you have a strong economy. The other stuff is not too important at the start of the game, and I'm gonna, but just know that it's there. You need fuel for obvious reasons. You need convoys to ship stuff around, and you gain command power and experience over time. Having looked at your main stats, you may have an idea of what you want to do with your country, and whether you want to do something aggressively or just wait out. Knowing that, you can select your national focus. So if you click on your flag, you can select the national focus. This gives you a focus tree, and this tree is different for every country. Now, working on one element at a time costs 1 political power per day. So what does the tree do for you? It basically focuses your country in a certain direction. And there's a lot of stuff you can get in the tree. You can get additional factories, you can get research bonuses, and you can get means to go to war. Alright, now before you can actually unpause the game, you have to work your way through these remarks at the top. They'll pop up as soon as you have something to do. So let's start with research. Countries have research slots. In this case, Italy has 4 slots, so I can work on 4 research at a time. And do note that generally large countries have more slots and small countries have fewer slots. You want to, I think this is important, always be working on a land doctrine. Land doctrine is basically what the Germans had at the start of World War II and other countries didn't. They had research pretty far down to Blitzkrieg and started the war, tactically more stout than astute, I think, more than their adversaries, and they were able to surprise basically the whole world. Which tree you pick, don't really mind. Pick whatever you like. Then you should probably go on to industry and start working on machine tools. And then you should be working on engineering. This research here is very short, and you always want to have, you always want to have radio relatively soon in the game when you start fighting, that is. So you need this research anyway, and it speeds up research. You want to start with that. And then you basically have a bit of a wild card left in the case of Italy, and you can pick whatever you like. You may want to get a good plane, such as a good fighter, and start producing that. But if it's your first game, just develop something you like. Moving on to construction. Construction works in a way that available civilian factories can be ordered to produce something else. Another civilian factory, military factories, and all sorts of other stuff. There is obviously all sorts of optimization possible, but for a country such as Italy or any other medium-sized country, you can work on civilian industry. It's fine. Just don't do it too long. Let's say for a few factories until the end of 36, or maybe halfway through 37. And from then onwards, start building military factories. You can also just start working on military factories right away, which are your factories which produce equipment which you need to wage war, which is in the end kind of the point of Hearts of Iron. Moving on to training, there are a few buttons which allow you to prioritize where newly produced equipment is going, and you have a bunch of templates. What are templates? Templates are divisions, and divisions are designed by the division designer, and divisions consist of line divisions and support divisions. A key concept here is combat width. This division has 12 combat width. For your first game, I would say that the key focus is to just have at least some sort of efficient combat width, and other than that, keep your templates simple. Combat width works as follows. If you attack from one tile to one other tile, the combat width is 80. If you then add, there you go, battle starts. If you click on a little bubble, you get to see the battle. The combat width is 80. If you then add an attack from another tile, the combat width increases by 40 to 120. There you go. If then you add another attack, you see where this is going, right? It improves to 160. Going over the combat width will occur when the last division you add does not make the combat width add up to its maximum, but actually makes it go over it. So that means that multiples of 10, 20 or 40 are actually efficient design options. Now you can also work with, for instance here, the width is 12 and actually the combat is nicely filled until 160. So you can work with that. You can also work with other multiples of 4. 16 is also pretty nice. But for your first game, just focus on 10, 20 or 40 and you'll be fine. Note that you can expand your templates with army experience. So you'll need some army experience, which you generally pick up in your focus tree or by fighting or by training your units. Moving on to production. This is probably a very daunting aspect for new players, and the game works as follows: as you can assign your free factories, so yeah, 9 out of 19 military factories assigned, and you can assign a factory to produce a certain type of equipment. And factories take time to become efficient at producing that sort of equipment, so you generally want to leave them there for a while. Now, what should you produce? The tutorial has a good starting point by saying, well, just go for infantry equipment, some support and some guns, which is generally advisable. But another way which I like explaining is that, for instance, if you look at your army and you want to you have more of it, and you've looked at your divisions and you figure that that your infantry division is a nice one, and you just want to have more infantry. You could say, well, I would like to have another army of infantry, which is 24 divisions, which is the maximum which can go onto a general. Then you can just put that in the queue, and maybe I also want to produce some tanks. Well, I want to have 2 additional tank divisions as well. Then the game actually already calculates for you how much equipment that costs. And if you go into the logistics screen, you'll see that, for instance, with infantry equipment, for new deployment, I need 16k infantry equipment, and I'm also doing some reinforcements still. In terms of tanks, for new deployment, I need 120 additional tanks. And the shortage will last for 422 days, which means that with my current assignment of factories, in 422 days, I will have produced enough tanks to equip my new divisions. Well, I may or may not want to have that done earlier. So I'm going to assign another factory, which when fully effective, will basically have that time. Also note that you can never ever have enough fighters. Now in terms of ships, you can pretty much finish the production of what's already there. Is generally okay. Do note that sometimes there's a large queue of some ship which you don't really want. So you may want to reduce the amount to 1. And you also want to add convoys at the bottom. You're bound to lose some in the future. Now, what ships should you produce? Well, that's basically a different, more detailed topic. But if you want to add something, you may want to go for a light cruiser of a recent year, so 1936, or like a destroyer, a 1936 destroyer, which is not available for Italy. You have to design it. So this should give you enough information to set up your economy and the basics of your country for your first game. I'll be making another video on your army, naval and air force, so that you know actually how to effectively control them, which is a key component of waging war in Hearts of Iron. The Paradox wiki page is very nice. Read it until your eyes bleed is really the best advice. I've spent a lot of time on this wiki page at the beginning of my my time spent in Hearts of Iron, and it's really very lovely. It's well written, and it covers all of the subjects if you want to take the time reading, that is. That's pretty much it. Stay tuned for more in-depth videos, and see you around. Enjoy playing the game. Bye bye.